Always true.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to be?
To say 2017 has been an important year for news and world events would be a huge understatement. It's been a year filled with consequential stories that have changed and shaped the political landscape around the world. From indigenous rights in the Amazon to the secession battle in Spain's Catalonia region. Kenya's not one but two controversial presidential elections. And then there's the crisis that hit the Gulf region with the blockade of Qatar. The growing refugee crisis stretching from Iraq, Libya to Europe and beyond. Al Jazeera has been there covering it all. Over the next half an hour, we'll look back on some of our most memorable and news-making interviews of 2017. I'm Jane Dutton. Welcome to the special edition of Talk to Al Jazeera. We start in Doha. On June the 5th, Qatar's nationals and residents woke up to the news that Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Egypt had all cut off diplomatic and economic ties with Qatar. The dispute caused major disruptions to air travellers across the region, home to several of the world's major long-haul carriers. Qatar Airways has been impacted by the crisis and has had to adjust its flight path and other operational procedures. So what does the future look like for one of the world's leading airlines? Qatar Airways Chief Executive Akbar Al-Bakr talked to Andrew Simmons back in June.
This is the last thing any CEO of an airline would want to hear, that the airspace in which it operates, international airspace in which it operates, has illegally been blocked.
We've heard of air wars. This transcends everything. Do you feel that in effect you're under attack? In fact, Qatar is under attack.
As we are being affected, so our neighbors who have got into this illegal act in blocking us, their national carriers are also getting affected. What is also doing is letting the entire region's air connectivity confidence to be lost. So they are in the same basket. So they should not think that they'll be going laughing to the bank whilst they are putting economic pain on my country. Individuals have climbed on a tree which is very tall. And now to get down from this tree, they will be injured. My country will persevere.
This is not a situation that's going to be over quickly, is it?
We have taken a moral high ground because the country has very wise leadership.
Could there be a commercial motivation as well as a political one in what's happening?
Actually, they want Qatar to coax them into their sphere of influence. They want Qatar sovereignty to be under their control, and I don't think state of Qatar will agree to relinquish our foreign policy and our sovereignty in the hand of anybody. This is a wound that has been created for a generation. This will never be forgotten. I'm not a politician. Again, there are certain parts of this question should be answered by the political echelons of my country. But one thing I can tell you, regardless if it lasts less or long, the wound has already been very deep, and people will not forget.
In the fight against ISIL, Iraq has been at the forefront. In a bloody military campaign that started in early 2014, Iraqi and Kurdish forces, supported by an international coalition, fought to root out ISIL. Mosul was the first major city in Iraq the armed group took control of. But after 2 years, 2017 brought the end of ISIL in Mosul and its surrounding villages, and people began to return to their homes. But what is homecoming like when you find out that ISIL fighters lived in your house? We met some returning Iraqis. Take a look.
This is, or should we say was, the town of BASUKI. Salim and Saadiya are a Yazidi couple who fled their home with their children. They had heard what ISIL did in Sinjar, where scores of people were killed and many women kidnapped, raped and enslaved.
والله كانت الحياة طيبة وماشية والحمد لله بس من جو دخلوا علينا انهزمنا ويعني قلبت الحياة.
How does it make you feel that these fighters were staying in your house?
ايش تسوي؟ بس همزين قعدوا هنا بيتنا. همزين قعدوا بيتنا، لأن ما حرقوا قعدوا. يعني لو ما قاعدين كان حرقوه، كله كان احترق. بيتنا بس قاعدين ببيتنا زين زين سووا
I never expected to hear such a thing.
لا ما متوقعين لا والله يا ايش تسوي لهم؟
خنازير خنازير هذول
هم هذول خنازير 11
وحوش
وحوش ايه وحوش 11 وحوش
هذول وحوش هذول ما عندهم إنسانية.
You know, everybody has a favorite object or a book or something they really like and they had for years. What is yours?
والله الحاجة بتاعتنا هي الصور مع أولادنا والألبوم والكاسيتات مع زوجنا وأولادنا.
And did you find them?
الحفلة أي والله.
لقيتيهم؟
لا لقيت شوية منهم والباقي راح. شو ما حزينة يا أخي. ذكريات لأولادنا ومال زواجهم ومال حفلة والصور كله راحوا.
One of our most controversial interviews of this past year was the one our correspondent Mohammed Val did with Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni, who's been in power for over 31 years. He's been elected to office 5 times, but he's been accused of corruption, human rights abuse and nepotism. Let's have a look at Mohammed's interview with the president.
After 5 terms, you are now 71 or 72, I don't know.
72.
In 3 years, you will reach the age limit, and you can't run for another term. Who is there in the country now, qualified, capable, sitting in the wings, waiting to be the next leader?
The people of Uganda are there. They will select who, according to the what. The other leaders are there, but to maximize the leadership input, we use all our leaders, the young ones, the old ones. Now
they want to come. They want to come forward, but they're not allowed. They're not allowed.
This is not about wanting. This is the whole problem. You're talking about wanting. I want. It's not you wanting. It is what the situation demands.
Your own son, who is now very highly elevated in the army, and you're also special advisor on certain issues. Your wife also is a minister. She's sitting next to you in the cabinet. Reports that you are preparing one of these two to be the next leader of Uganda. What do you say to this?
Why should I prepare them? It's the people of Uganda to choose the one they want.
If I ask the people of Uganda, maybe they will say something different, because we are reading what the opposition says and what the Ugandans say, and it is different from what you say.
Why do you read what the opposition says? Why don't you read?
You said you asked me to ask the people. The people say something different.
The people are not only the opposition.
How would you guarantee that in the future, in history, you won't go down as a dictator instead of a democratic president?
A dictator who is elected 5 times, that must be a wonderful dictator.
Let's hear more from Mohammed Val. Mohammed, President Museveni doesn't give interviews very often, does he? What was the reaction like in Uganda after this interview?
Inside Uganda, people were divided according to their loyalty to President Museveni or the lack of it. Those loyal to him, they felt insulted, and they said, this interview shouldn't happen like this. They addressed me in their social media messages saying, how do you dare ask our president this type of questions? So they're not used to see President Museveni being challenged in this manner. Those who are opposed to Museveni, on the other hand, celebrated the interview, and they said, the president has never been put on the spot like this, has never been pinned down and grilled in this way, and they were very satisfied. They sent me private messages to thank me for that interview.
And what do you think is next for Uganda? Will there be a regime change, or will President Museveni stay in office, and for how long?
It doesn't look this is going to happen anytime soon. Despite the fact that the age limit in the Ugandan constitution for a president to be able to run again for office is 75, and Museveni is now 73 as we speak. When the next election comes, he will be almost 77. However, there is debate now in the parliament for him to be able to continue to run for office, a 6th term if it happens. So that gives you signs that the man is not about to be willing to leave office.
Thanks, Mohammed. The Rohingya have been called the most persecuted people in the world, and their Decades-long plea for recognition in Myanmar turned into a desperate battle for survival this year when the military began its violent crackdown in Rakhine state in late August. Hundreds of thousands of Muslim Rohingya fled to neighbouring Bangladesh, where they've been living in overcrowded camps without adequate food or medicine. The UN has called it an ethnic cleansing, but at the core of this crisis is Myanmar's refusal to recognise its Rohingya population as citizens. So can the Muslim and Buddhist communities of Rakhine State come to an understanding under Aung San Suu Kyi's leadership? Talk to Al Jazeera travelled to the centre of the crisis.
Myanmar was a British colony until independence in 1948. The man considered the father of the nation was Aung San Suu Kyi's father, General Aung San. He founded an armed group that was later transformed into the nation's army, but he was assassinated shortly before independence. After an initial period with a parliamentary system, the military staged a coup in 1962 and stayed in power until the military leadership gave way to elections in 2010. Aung San Suu Kyi, who had led a campaign against the military, was elected to parliament 2 years later. And when her party won a majority in 2015, she was named state chancellor, and thereby solidly becoming the leading member of the new government. Meanwhile, the Rohingya, throughout this period, they were living primarily in the western state of Rakhine. But unlike many other ethnic groups, and there are hundreds of them, they were never considered part of the Myanmar population.
You say that discrimination and persecution of the Rohingya people in Myanmar has been going on for 50 years. Do you still have hope that this government of Aung San Suu Kyi will re-establish the citizen rights of the Rohingya people?
Aung San Suu Kyi, she is a Nobel laureate. She always talking for the justice. So, and we believe, I think there is some challenges in front of her. I think international community should help our government to address this issue.
The government has said that there's a group of extremists, of militants who are behind the attacks of October 9, and they even call them terrorists, with help from abroad. Do you think that that is true?
One thing, we don't encourage any kind of insurgents. We don't encourage any kind of terrorism. And even all the Rohingya, they are peace-loving people. They will not encourage these things. So we want peace and we want to live with harmony.
And now we take you to Catalonia. It is a prosperous region in the northeast of Spain. But in recent years, secessionist sentiments have risen among Catalans. Carles Puigdemont was the president of the Catalan regional government, but he was forced out of his job by the Spanish government for holding a referendum on secession that Spain had ruled was illegal. He picked to talk to Al Jazeera as the first international news program to discuss explicit details about the referendum. This is what he said to Hodda Abdelhamid in Barcelona back in April.
What is the nature of this conflict?
És un conflicte polític entre un estat espanyol que no entén que Catalunya és una nació, que té dret a decidir i que ja s'ha cansat dels incompliments de l'Estat i de que per poder ser espanyol hagis de renunciar a ser català.
What is the question or the questions that will be put forward to the voters to answer? Do you want to stay part of Spain or do you want to become an independent state?
La pregunta no serà exactament aquesta que diu vostè, però evidentment que no tindrà cap confusió possible. Pot ser, per exemple, i no li estic dient la pregunta, però pot ser, vol que Catalunya sigui un estat independent? Sí o no, per exemple. Vol que Catalunya sigui una república independent? Sí o no. Vol que Catalunya continuï formant part d'Espanya? Sí o no. Depèn.
At the moment we're facing, there's two quite hard positions on both sides. On one side, you either want negotiations or we're going ahead with the independence, you're saying. On the other hand, the Spanish government is not compromising too much at the moment. Do you think that this could escalate in a dangerous way? Do you think that the Spanish government could use force, military force or police force, even if you go with the vote?
No, també li vull ser honest amb això. Jo no crec en absolut que l'estat espanyol es plantegi l'utilització de l'exèrcit ni de la força física. És inviable des de tots els punts de vista, perquè en el moment que utilitzés la força física ha perdut aquesta situació.
The conflict in eastern Ukraine has now been raging for over 3 years. The UN says the fighting between pro-Russian separatists and the Ukrainian military has killed nearly 10,000 people. The separatists control a large area close to the Russian border, from the town of Novokivka in the north to the contested town of Rakhine to the south. Talk to Al Jazeera travelled there to talk to civilians suffering on both sides of the front line.
This is a story about some of the people who have to endure the suffering of war on both sides of the front line. Many of the people who remain in Avdiivka rely on aid agencies and charities for food and water. Yelena came across the front line from Donetsk 6 months ago looking for work. Jobs were scarce in this region before the war, and now they are even more difficult to find.
А мне некуда ехать. Я пыталась уехать на Украину, мы там не нужны, там нет работы, у меня нет родственников на Украине. Родители находятся на неподконтрольной территории в Луганске, они не получают украинскую пенсию. 8 месяцев мы жили впроголодь, у нас не было никаких источников дохода. Это 15-й год, конец 14-го, начало 15-го. Вообще ничего, 8 месяцев. Мы не нужны в России, мы не нужны в Украине. Ну, послушайте, я здравомыслящий человек, у меня университетское образование. Неужели я не понимаю, что в любой момент может прилететь снаряд? Я понимаю это.
You can hear a lot of heavy machine gun fire now. This neighbourhood, certainly around this neighbourhood last night, there was a lot of heavy shelling. Now, the authorities here are not allowing us any closer to the front line. But we've been speaking to people here, and they say that the recent escalation in fighting feels like to them that the war is beginning again. Victoria Yeremkina has lived here for the last 30 years.
Со вчерашнего обеда и до вечера и очень сильно, потому что, я же говорю, мы живем-то вот рядом совсем. Вот даже вот стекла не можем вытащить.
She shows me where she says a bullet came through her window.
Вот палец у меня проваливается. Вот он.
Where was she at the time?
А вот тут стояла в доме, буквально в 2 метрах.
She says her neighbour's home was completely destroyed in 2014.
Вот как я брошу? Вот у меня здесь в доме, ну, там и телевизор, и холодильник, все. Я уеду, а что потом будет? Просто мародеры разберут и все. То, что мы наживали годами, его просто разберут. Вот так. Поэтому я уезжать никуда не буду отсюда.
Now we go to Venezuela. In April, opponents of socialist President Nicolas Maduro took to the streets demanding immediate elections, blaming him for acute shortages and the world's highest inflation. Maduro's response was to call for and win a referendum to rewrite the constitution, a move many believe will turn Venezuela into a one-party state like Cuba. More than 120 people were killed and thousands arrested during months of unrest. As president of the new Constituent Assembly, Delcy Rodriguez is arguably the most powerful person in Venezuela today. The Assembly has the power to override and even replace the president. At what may have been Venezuela's most critical hour, she talked to Al Jazeera's Lucia Newman.
You said the other day, and I was very surprised, and so were the Venezuelans that were near me, that there is no hunger in Venezuela. But yet I see people, and so I'm sure have you, in your neighborhood, picking through the rubbish.
Los medios de comunicación agarran a una persona que está buscando comida en la basura. Pero ¿por qué no ves el hambre que hay en Colombia, el hambre que hay en Perú, el hambre que hay en Honduras? No, porque ese es el problema, que solamente se habla sobre Venezuela. Y nosotros no tenemos problema de hablar sobre las complejidades de Venezuela, producto de esa guerra económica. Todos los gobiernos de la región que dicen que Venezuela debe ser intervenida porque hay hambre y crisis humanitaria, sus cifras sociales, Lucía, y eso no es mentira, sus cifras sociales son escandalosas.
This is an immensely rich country. Where is the money? According to one of your former
economy
ministers, 300 billion disappeared.
En un modelo donde Venezuela fue reconocido internacionalmente por su modelo. Allí estaba el dinero del petróleo, allí estaba redistribuida la renta petrolera que en el pasado no era distribuida para el pueblo venezolano.
Your government's decision to create a legislative superbody that you preside over is being described by many all over the world as a consolidation of a dictatorship.
Venezuela vive un proceso de democracia participativa. Y esa democracia participativa se ha visto reforzada con la elección a la Asamblea Nacional Constituyente.
What about all the opposition people who were unarmed, who were killed, many times by the National Guardsmen at point-blank range?
Estamos atendiendo los casos de todas las víctimas y hemos dicho que agente del Estado que haya actuado violando los reglamentos, sus reglamentos de actuación y hayan causado una muerte en Venezuela, se le seguirá un proceso y habrá justicia en esos casos.
Let's go now to Lucia Newman in Santiago, Chile. Lucia, how is the food situation right now? Is there still a shortage?
Jane, there is a desperate shortage of food and also of medicine, even the most basic medicine that people need just to keep alive. But it's not just a matter of not finding these things, it's being able to afford it. People cannot afford to eat any longer because of the inflation rate in Venezuela, which is going up day by day. In fact, by the end of this year, it will have reached at least 1,000%, which is difficult to imagine. And according to the International Monetary Fund, in 2018, it should surpass 2,300%. That is called hyperinflation. That is sending tens of thousands of Venezuelans across the border into Colombia to try to find food. But it is also increasing infant mortality. There is massive malnutrition, not just amongst children and newborns, but also mothers. And so maternal mortality has now soared. And it was once the lowest in the region. Now it is probably the highest in all of South America.
What about the people who've been killed? Are there any of those cases on trial? Has anyone been held accountable for the killings of people?
In theory, the authorities have investigated charges of abuse of power on the part of the security forces. I know of at least 2 cases where a policeman and a National Guardsman were arrested after they were filmed shooting at point blank 2 protesters who were killed, one of them with a tear gas canister. This video went viral. It forced the authorities to arrest them. But as far as I know, and certainly according to their relatives, these people have not been tried and certainly have not been convicted.
Thank you very much indeed, Lucia. Jakarta's former governor, known as Ahok, was sentenced to 2 years in prison earlier this year. He was charged and convicted of blasphemy over comments he made about a Quranic verse. Now, the court case against the Indonesian capital's first Christian and ethnic Chinese governor since the 1960s was brought forward by several conservative Islamic groups. Ahok talked to Al Jazeera's Step Vassen back in January before his verdict was announced. She spoke to him about his legal battle and what it means for a country with the world's biggest Muslim population.
Now you're on trial for blasphemy and you're facing 5 years in prison. Do you think it's fair to use the blasphemy law in this context against you?
Tapi kalau negara kami masih menganut, ya saya harus taat. Ya kan? Tapi bagi saya, ini ada sejarah untuk bangsa ini. Apakah akan membangun bangsa ini di atas fondasi Pancasila dan Undang-Undang Dasar 45, termasuk NKRI dan Bhinneka Tunggal Ika? Ya, saya bersyukur kalau sejarah memilih saya untuk di posisi seperti hari ini. Karena seorang Ahok, semua orang harus rethinking about Pancasila, reinventing Pancasila. Ini menarik. Kita mau Pancasila atau mau ganti ideologi?
Step Vassen joins us now from Jakarta. Step, what is the latest with Ahok? He's still in jail, but where does his case stand?
Yes, Jane, Ahok is still serving his prison term. Soon after his verdict was handed down in May, 2 years in prison, he decided not to appeal this verdict because he said he didn't want to create more controversy in society. As you remember, his case and also his controversial remarks about this Quranic verse led to huge protests here in the Indonesian capital, one of the largest protests in Indonesian modern history. And also his supporters went to the streets trying to defend him. Amnesty International has called Ahok a prisoner of conscience and has asked for his immediate release. But as things are looking now, because also the prosecutor didn't appeal the verdict, it looks like Ahok will be released somewhere in 2019. He will probably get some deductions for good behavior. He's basically spending his time reading a lot. He's reading a lot of religious books, the Quran and also the Bible. He's learning local languages and he's receiving a lot of visitors in prison. He's still quite popular here among some groups here in Jakarta at the moment.
Do you think Ahok's political career is over, or what's next for him?
Well, no, his political career is not necessarily over. He will be released in 2019, which is a very important political year here in Indonesia. It will be the next presidential election. And before this whole case happened and before he went to jail, Ahok even hinted at joining this race for the presidency. And that seems, of course, quite unlikely right now. But he can still run for public office. In Indonesia, the law says that anyone who has been in prison for less than 5 years can actually run for any public office, and it's very likely that Ahok will still have these ambitions. He was a very passionate governor, and he's a very passionate bureaucrat. But the big question, of course, will be how controversial will the former governor be when he comes out of prison? Will he still be as controversial as he is today, or will his prison term and also his activities in prison will gain his popularity? Will this turn him into some kind of hero? This can only, of course, be answered by the time he will be released.
Thanks, Deb. That's it for us. A big thanks to you, our audience, for watching. We hope you'll join us and talk to Al Jazeera in 2018. I'm Jane Dutton. Goodbye.